Vanessa Ronan Pearce, a top 100 fintech woman, show 065. I am Mitchell Chadrow, your host, and this is the Listen Up Show. It's great to do work that you love and that inspires. If I describe Vanessa in one word, it would be creativity. Vanessa is the founder of Intersekt, a company that has helped create, build, and launch Australia's first Fintech Festival. Named a top 100 woman in Fintech 2018. Passionate about music, dance, and design. What will we discuss with Vanessa today? Well, everything Fintech, from open data, blockchain, digital currencies, digital robo-advice, alternative finance and payment, AI, better known as artificial intelligence, digital identity, neobanks, RegTech, InsurTech, and we are going to pack all of that in this 40-minute interview. That's why you have to listen up. Get the show notes back at mitchellchadrow.com/show 065. Sign up at my website, mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up for the latest podcast articles and special resource guides. Only for those listeners who sign up back at my website, mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up. We all want to listen up. So Vanessa, are you ready?
I'm ready, Mitchell.
Sounds great. Everyone wants to know, how do you become a top 100 woman in fintech? I mean, what's the secret?
Look, if I knew, I would have orchestrated it. I think
it's kind of like being like an overnight success, right? I mean, it just happened, right?
It was a bit of a shock. And in fact, I found out because someone emailed me on LinkedIn and said, I see it on the list with me. We should connect. I'm like, what list? Huh? And,
wow.
Yeah, so I was very flattered and very humble, particularly because I was only one of two Australian women who actually made the list, which, being very close to the Australian ecosystem, I know that there are some phenomenal women out there. So I think it's just that I'm noisy. So I get out there and talk a lot. I'm connecting to a lot of people. I'm promoting the Australian ecosystem every chance I get.
So you like to stir it up. You're not quiet, right?
Correct. No, I'm not quiet.
Okay. Well, I've never been accused of that either. So what actually goes into building a fintech festival? Tell us a little bit about how you got this thing off the ground and how you built it. Tell us how the pieces all sort of came together for you.
Well, it kind of came out of the role that I've been in for the last 2 years. I work as the kind of 2IC to the CEO at Fintech Australia. We're the national association that supports all the fintech startups. We were created in March of 2016, so we're just 2 years old. And the ecosystem in Australia has grown from 100 startups that year to over 650 startups in Australia now. So it's just kind of gone boom in the last 2 years. And we started with a summit, which everybody does, pretty traditional and normal. And then we were inspired by the Singapore Fintech Festival and thought, why not? We can run one. Let's do one. So we grew a festival last year, which was 8 days. And it exceeded all expectations. We had 1,500 people at the festival itself, and I think close to 800 at the summit. In our first year, we had 250 attend. So our second year, we had 800. So it must.
So how do you?
Fintech.
How do you actually grow this conference from 250 to over 1,500? I mean, that seems like an incredible amount of growth. How do you do it?
I think it's a combination of the growth of the industry, luck, and again, just getting out there and talking to everybody. So a lot of the incumbents are being challenged. At the moment in Australia, we're in the middle of a royal commission investigating bank practices and financial advice. So there's a massive spotlight on the big four banks at the moment, and they're looking to see how things can be done differently. And so they are starting to want to know about fintech in Australia. And same with the regulators. There's a lot of they can see that there's this global race around fintech. You know, Singapore is doing an amazing job at investing huge amounts of money into fintech. The US obviously has a massive fintech space and growth, and that's come out of the tech scene. And so people are starting to look at Australia. We have a very mature market. We have a very advanced investors. The general population is very well educated. So there's a high adoption rate. We're early adopters in Australia. And so the growth has come from almost a necessity for new things and to understand this incredibly growing and exciting landscape. Because fintech, as you probably know, it's going to it already is, changing the fabric of financial services.
Well, we're going to certainly talk about the adoption rate. We're also going to talk about raising capital. But before I do that, tell me a little bit about Finney Awards for startups and how you actually came about identifying these outstanding players who demonstrate this long-term vision in building and financing their sustainable business growth. How do you actually go about choosing and picking them?
So the Finney Awards, very early. The Finney Awards,
I know, it's a 14-hour difference between Philadelphia, where I'm at, on the East Coast here in the U.S., and of course, being in Australia, you're 14 hours ahead, so it's actually Friday now.
It is 7 a.m. Friday morning in sunny Sydney.
Wow. See, I'm an early riser myself. Like, I got up at like 4 o'clock today. I know what it's like. Get up, start out early, and get my day going. So it's after 5 o'clock here in the late afternoon. So I very much appreciate you coming on so early.
7 o'clock midday for you then.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
So we actually do a national census with EY, so the Fintech Australia and EY Fintech census. And one of the things that was highlighted was that there's not a lot of opportunity for promotion for Australian fintech or recognition. We have a very small population compared to the US, the UK, or China, and so customer acquisition is a major concern for the fintechs that are starting up. So they wanted a way to be recognised, for the opportunity for articles and for promotion, and also for the opportunity for internationals to have a look at their startups. So when we created the Finnies, which is it's only in its second year this year, I just come back from South by Southwest in Austin, which was amazing, and had recruited a heap of American judges. So this year we have 85 judges, and so we have at least 5 judges per category. We have over 220 entries this year, which is amazing. Last year we had 150, so it's more than 30% growth. And we've got 23 categories, which reflects the huge spread of the ecosystem, everything from data to regtech to insurtech to AI to payments to lending. And I think we've got a couple of categories in lending, peer-to-peer, B2C.
Yeah, no, certainly. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned partners, and I know that you obviously, of course, have had a number of really key sponsors. I know that you had indicated that the secret is your ability to sort of get out there and network, and that's how you're able to sort of get guests. But talk to us a little bit about some of these partners and some of the sponsors and how you've actually been able to bring them in the fold, so to speak, with the festival.
So with Intersekt, we've got some very passionate and engaged partners, which is fantastic. Always it makes my job a lot easier. So our presenting partner is actually the Victorian government, which is great. It's a little bit challenging for me because I'm based in New South Wales, so it's kind of like working in New York and having a sponsor in Los Angeles. But the Victorian government has been incredibly supportive of fintech startups, and they're investing a lot of money in really supporting this ecosystem. And so they are our presenting partner. They've been our partner for 3 years now. Some of the corporate partners who are involved.
And so how do you for a lot of the businesses out there, a lot of the startups, we just had somebody on who's a young startup who actually built their company just from cold calls before they could sort of ramp up and then get referrals from existing customers. So how did you actually sort of get the Victorian government there in Australia to actually sign up to be a partner? I mean, I think that our audience members are interested in how those networking things kind of work, those skills that really, between me and you, that's how sales are created.
Absolutely. And by no means did I do it on my own. This is a huge team effort, and we have very strong advocates in Melbourne. In fact, the chair of Fintech Australia, Stuart Stoyan, is a huge advocate for Fintech Australia and is also phenomenal at networking. So he is out there talking to everybody that he can, and he has built phenomenal relationships with the Victorian government, and they have put themselves on a platform to say, we are innovative, we have the finance, we have the investment, come and talk to us. So they've opened their door, which is unheard of really for government. And so Stuart was in there talking to them and telling them all about fintech from the very beginning. And so when we were able to then go and talk to them about what we wanted to do with Fintech Australia and our conference, it was just a perfect fit. And it was the right timing with the right people and the right conversation. And I think because Stuart and I are both very passionate about the industry and we believe in the startups, and we can also deliver. So we've both got a track record of delivering great products and events, and he's a startup founder himself, and so they kind of took a chance on us.
Do you have an interesting story for us? I know that you just mentioned, EY, Ernst & Young, and of course some of your sponsors being Visa and Acorns and Stripe and Accenture. These are all key sponsors and key players within the success of your conference. Do you have any interesting stories in terms of how you're able to sort of build these types of relationships to sort of get traction in the market and increase your attendance to go from 250 to over 1,500 is pretty phenomenal.
I'm trying to think. EY has been a phenomenal partner, and I think the work that we've done with them is key to the awareness and the growth of the industry. So actually creating a census that clearly shows the massive growth, the massive investment, the money that is being poured into fintech globally, but also in Australia. Air Wallet is a phenomenal partner and a great story. So again, Lucy Liu, who's the co-founder, she's also on our board. So we're very lucky at Fintech Australia to have a very active startup board. They've had a major investment over the last 2 years, and so they're really wanting to get their story out there. One of the cool stories that we've got is we have some policy partners. Herbert Smith Freehills is one of them, which is a big legal firm, and they're in a challenging situation because a lot of their big clients are the banks, but they recognise that the market is changing, and so they're trying to they're working at being supportive of the fintech ecosystem. And so we actually have 6 policy partners that work with us, and it's a really interesting, and I'm sure you can understand being a lawyer, Mitchell. It's a very interesting balance for them to try and balance their big clients who are financing them with their smaller clients who are actively trying to disrupt their business, but still add value to both.
Yeah, certainly. So, now, obviously, you have quite a bit of practical insight when it comes to working with top venture capitalists, private investors, private equity firms. What are some of the tips that you have for those startups wanting to obviously get funding for their startup, whether it be in the fintech industry or really it could apply to any other industry that the startups that are listening might find themselves in?
Well, yeah, I think startups in the US are a little bit more fortunate than startups in Australia. You have a big market to begin with. What I would say to any startup is make sure that what you're creating, that you're not replicating something that already exists in the market, that you're really solving a unique problem, that you've defined your audience, and that your solution can be applied to can't even think of the word now, across multiple regions. So you don't just want it to be an American solution. You want it to be able to be applied to Europe, to the UK, to Australia, to some of the growing fintech areas, which we look at, particularly as we're based in Australia. So like Malaysia, Indonesia, India, there's massive opportunities for growth in those other markets that people don't necessarily consider.
No, that's great. Our startup round is sponsored by TrustSmarter.com. Trusts and estates are not just for the rich and wealthy. Trust Smarter focuses on you, the consumer. Doesn't have to be the person setting up the trust. Could be a family member, a beneficiary, an individual trustee, or executor that needs help. There are numerous reasons why people need to set up a trust or need help settling an estate. Consumers needed a better way, an easier, more efficient, and less time-consuming manner available to them to find a corporate trustee or executor. Trust Smarter educates you with articles, free guides, and information on estate planning, using trusts, how to take control of your estate to business and personal assets. You pick the trust company, corporate fiduciary, trustee, executor that is right for you based on your own values and criteria, which you filter yourself in the Trust Smarter platform. That you designate is important to you and your family. For example, you might be looking for a trust company that has no minimum asset size requirement or no minimum fee. You might prefer a trust company that is located within a certain number of miles from your home or business, or you may prefer to work with those who have a certain number of clients or assets under management, or someone that can handle certain types of assets or solutions. Bottom line, you get to decide. There is no high pressure having to go from bank to bank or trust company to trust company. My listeners who sign up back at TrustSmarter.com mention Listen Up at the time they are asked, how did you hear about us? And receive 5% off your trustee or estate fees in the first year. Each trust company on the platform is vetted to ensure that they're in good standing with either their state or federal regulator. You decide the values most important to you. You can easily set up a phone call with any of the regulated institutions. You choose the platform. The platform itself does all the heavy lifting to connect you, the consumer, with the various corporate fiduciaries who want help with your trust and estate. That's TrustSmarter.com. And when asked, how did you find out about us? Type in Listen Up. TrustSmarter is a virtual cash incorporated company. Okay, now back to the show. Let's do an informal fintech study of our own right here. Let's actually analyze both the challenges and the opportunities that fintech startups, not only in Australia have, but also here in the United States. Let's first talk about the Australian fintech ecosystem and then how it actually can apply here in the United States. In which fintech areas in Australia would you say are strong, and where would you say the competition lies better, let's say, here in the U.S.?
So actually the top three areas of fintech in Australia are payments and digital currencies, lending, and wealth tech. Now, that could be anything. But obviously the companies like AirWallet, Stripe, Atkins, and there's a couple of companies that have just grown astronomically in the last 12 months. There's a company called Afterpay, and they do, it's kind of like lay-by, but on a digital platform. And they just saw it as Australians love to shop. They saw it as a massive opportunity, and they have the opportunity to scale. So it's a company that just is made for other English-speaking countries who are really into shopping.
Well, I was going to actually ask you for some examples, but I think you've already kind of thrown out a number of those. I know that most recently we actually interviewed Stephen Dash, who is the founder of Credible.com, which was one of the largest tech IPOs back in 2017 on the Australian Stock Exchange. And I also happen to know that Ron Suber actually had also spoken at your conference, who's also the chairman of the board over at Credible.com. Can you tell us a little bit about working with those types of companies that are also not only on the exchanges there in Australia, but also then have a presence here in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Credible found a phenomenal niche, and there's a couple of other companies that are looking at this space now in loans for students. It's a problem in Australia, it's a problem in the US, so it's a fantastic solve. And obviously, the opportunity to go straight to the US makes sense for Credible. And so they launched over there as well as launching in Australia because there's a massive market. And in Australia, we have some government support, but I know how hard it is for students in the US. So it was a perfect fit for that market. And, Ron coming out to speak at our conference and being a keynote was so fantastic because he has depth of knowledge in the space, particularly coming from
Prosper.
Yes, of course, because we have Prosper in Australia.
I know it very well.
And one to Prosper. Yeah. And so
this is a collaborative work. You know what I mean? We're working together.
Exactly. This is how fintechs work. So you've got to share
exactly. See, we work across the ocean. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And one of the things that he said, and he said it a few times, going back to Ron, is that now is the perfect opportunity for fintechs. Now is the perfect opportunity for disruption, and that we are on the cusp of growth. Even though we've seen massive growth already, he really believes that this is the time. And I'm looking at the global economy, and I'll try not to get too much into politics, but. I'd always wanted to get out of Australia. I always wanted to get back to the UK or go to the US, but with the current climate and with some decisions that have been made overseas, I'm really happy in Australia. So we are, particularly in Australia, with such mature, as I mentioned before, such mature fintech. There's a real opportunity for Australia to lead the way in how things are done and then launch businesses overseas successfully like Credible has done. And there's some other companies like AirWallet, so they actually have a big presence in China. Lucy Liu is originally from China, and so was able to set up her business in Australia, understand the regulatory framework here, and then grow. There's another company called Nico, which is doing AI around digital identity. They're already in Europe and the UK because of the open data regime over there. We're a little bit backwards. We're still putting our open data submissions into government at the moment, and so they're waiting for Australia to be ready for their product. But they're actively helping around the policy changes and advising on the experiences they've had with policy and open data and what's working and what isn't in the UK and Europe. So to have that kind of experience in Australia is also very helpful for our growth and for our marketplace.
You mentioned EY, and they actually do an index every year, as you're aware, in terms of not only the consumer adoption of fintech solutions in Australia, but also the institutional adoption of fintech solutions. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen year to year, that index?
What I can say is, though, when we started, it was all about disruption, and it became a bit of a dirty word. And what we're seeing now is that more and more incumbents are looking at collaboration and partnership. And, in fact, that's why our summit is called Collide. There are some players out there who definitely want to disrupt and do their own thing and establish themselves as an independent, standalone business. We have a lot of digital banks who are starting to make headway. But there are other companies who can see that there are issues with the incumbents, and even the ability to create innovation within a big bank is challenging because of their systems and processes, and they don't have, not all of them have innovation labs or have the ability to create these new ideas. And so they're really looking at how they can partner with fintechs. HSBC we've been talking to recently, and they have a small team on the ground in Australia, and they're doing an outside-in innovation program. So they're really wanting to get out there and talk to fintechs to find out what they're doing, to see how they can partner with and leverage off some of these ideas.
It sounds like you're really having a great time there in Australia, and I know that you had indicated that you really like the niche territory that you're in right now. So what are some of the strengths and the weaknesses that you see for Australian fintech companies competing with some of the companies here in the U.S.? So this would be the strengths and weaknesses compared to the U.S.
Yeah, we were just talking about this yesterday.
Perfect timing.
Absolutely. One of the things I think is that some Australian startups think that they're competing with each other, and that's we get a bit myopic. So you look at your own backyard and think, who are my competitors here, and what do I need to think about? And we need to look outside of Australia, because where our biggest competitors are going to come from are the US and China and the UK. You know, the Alipays and Amazon and Stripe. You know, Stripe's a US company, Yodlee. So we've got to look at who's doing it well, and I think US companies get the opportunity in the US to test their product in a massive market. And so by the time they come to Australia, it's very, the user experience is fantastic, the product is refined, and where our opportunity is that we are a very different market. We're a different kind of people. We want a different experience. And so Australian fintechs or Australian startups have the opportunity to target their product to an Australian audience. But then in order to become sustainable, they're going to have to grow overseas. They're going to have to find customer acquisition offshore.
Sure. So that kind of takes me into opportunities and threats that Australian fintech companies are actually facing right now. And again, you might have touched upon it by comparing and contrasting the Australian market with the United States market in terms of strengths and weaknesses. But I to sort of build on that, that kind of talks about the current opportunities and threats that you're faced with.
Yeah, I think one of the threats, and this is kudos to Singapore, is the Asian market, because we're much closer to Asia than we are to the US or UK, even though that most of our startups say where they want to grow is the US and UK. I think that's just, we look for things that are comfortable and familiar, and going to a European or American economy is much easier than looking at an Asian economy, because they're so different. Recently, when we were in Singapore, we had Austrade and ASIC with a panel, and a lot of companies fail in their growth plan to go to Asia, because they think that the whole of ASEAN is the same, and so they have an ASEAN strategy, but each market is completely different. Hong Kong is different to Singapore, is different to Indonesia, is different to Malaysia, is different to Japan. They all have cultural uniqueness, and so that's a challenge in itself. In fact, I was talking to a startup yesterday. They have an amazing RegTech startup, Advice RegTech is the company, and someone in China is already interested in their product, but they're not ready to be able to put it into the Chinese language yet. They've made the decision to get the product right in Australia in English, and then figure out how to translate it into Chinese. And because that brings because of the particular startup, this startup looks at uncovering the fine print in insurance products.
Very neat.
So that when people are signing it, they know what they're really signing and making sure that they've got the cover that they want. So it's
so like a good attorney, you always make sure to read that fine boilerplate before you sign on the dotted line, correct?
Exactly.
Right. Like all those agreements that you sign, you know what I mean? Like when you get online and you don't really have a choice, you just got to accept the terms and that's it. Take it or leave it.
Right. No one reads them. And move on.
Yeah, no one listens to their attorney.
That's right.
Right? No one listens to their attorney.
They pay you
and that's
they pay you to know, so they don't have to.
It's interesting that you should say that because our fast pitch round is actually sponsored by Chadrow.net. That's CHADROW.net. Chadrow.net. Startups, bootstrappers, those who like to leverage resources are price smarter. When hiring an attorney, you apply these same smarter maxims. One of our business's greatest costs can be paying your lawyer high hourly rates. That's why my Listen Up business owner listeners are smarter and turn to Chadrow.net. More and more businesses will use Chadrow.net to start up their businesses from S to C corporations and LLCs and so much more. Be aware that even after your business is set up, running your business properly is critical to your success. Chadrow.net can help you with your contract reviews, lease agreement, changing tax laws, and any other type of legal issue or problem that needs a solution. All this takes time and effort, so you don't want these legal issues to take away from running your business. Your day-to-day main focus is growing your business, so Chadrow.net created a business legal service plan. Just listen up to what the business legal service plan provides you. All lawyers and CPA professionals in the directory are verified as in good standing with their respective state bar and state board of accountancy admitted. These lawyers and CPA professionals provide you and your business with legal and or tax advice. Get access to NDAs, lease agreements, and more. The best part, no more being nickel and dime for a 6-minute telephone call. No more dealing with billable hours because Chadrow.net is not a law firm. Instead, just pay one upfront, fully disclosed low fee. See for yourself now the business legal service plan at Chadrow.net. Special savings today for the listeners of My Listen Up show when you enter Mitchell at checkout. Don't forget Chadrow.net. Mitchell at checkout. Chadrow.net. Get legal solutions for life. Chadrow.net. Enter Mitchell at checkout. Now, let's get back to it. Vanessa, on the Listen Up show, the Mitchell Chadrow podcast, we love books, and I'm sure you love books as well. Can you recommend a book for the audience to go out and read today?
I do love books. I have to think what area I should propose.
I mean, it could be business. It could be, it doesn't have to be in that genre. This could be anything that has really inspired you, motivated you, given you new ideas, helped you in business, family, or life. Because, the podcast is not just about business. It's also about family and life. So it really could be, a multitude of things.
Well, the one that I've just read, was perfect for where we're at the moment with, where I'm at with what I'm doing and having to be agile, was called Mindset. And so it dives into a different kind of mindset, and there's a lot of study around how we should be raising our kids. And Mitchell and I shared at the beginning of the podcast that we've both got kids, so it's how do we be good parents as well as good business people, and mindset is the difference between fixed and growth mindset.
We're raising the next generation of young entrepreneurs, which I think is really, really awesome. As far as heroes go, somebody that inspires you, that it could be in business or it could be in your personal life, but if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first person who inspires me is gratefully my husband. That's always a bonus. He's actually a trained actuary and is now a chief risk officer in Australia in the insurance space. And the way he sees the world is very different to me. My background, I was a performer, so I have a degree in dance and I work in financial services. Makes sense, not really. So having come into this industry later in my career, it's really great to have someone so close that I can bounce ideas off. And then the other people who inspire me at the moment, I've been doing a lot of work with gender equality in fintech, because our census has shown that there is 87% male founders in Australian fintech. So we've got to do some work in getting some women founders out there, and I think it's partly a mindset and partly actual barriers, and it's a reflection of the financial services industry, and probably the same in the US.
Raising two young women, I mean, I can't think of something that's better than that. You know, that's awesome. How about a quote or something that inspires, a mantra that you kind of go off of to sort of help you in business?
My all-time favorite quote, now I have to look it up, is by Anais Nin, the author, Nin, and it's, now can I remember it exactly? It's around growth, and I'm going to have to get paraphrased. It's when... You will paraphrase,
but I promise you, if you give me enough information, you know I'm going to be able to Google it, right? And I'm going to be able to get it just the way it's supposed to be.
There it is. And so the quote is, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom."
Good stuff.
For me, it speaks volumes because, and it also reflects the fintech industry, because fintechs are trying to change customer behaviours. So they want people to move from banks to adopt new technologies. However, people aren't going to do that until it's so painful where they are that they'll look at something new. So we're creatures of habit. And it also comes back to things where we're training people or changing their habits. You know, there's one of the books that I've read recently says that it takes 66 days to create a new habit. That's a long time. You know, that's
sure is.
And that understanding that, not that I want to put people into a painful position, but understanding that means that it helps to allow people to grow if you understand what's going to motivate them.
You know, in the beginning of the interview, when I described you using one word, the reason why I actually came up with the word creativity is because over and over and over again, I kept on seeing different things like design and dance and, you know, other things of that nature. And I know that one of my all-time favorite websites to help me with design is Canva. And I also had a young entrepreneur on, a competitor of Canva called Snappa. And I just recently saw that Canva just made their first acquisition, buying a Sydney-based interactive presentation software company, of course, called Meetings, which, again, being your neck of the woods, and I knew that you were coming on today on the Listen Up show, and so I thought, gee, creativity, design, and let me find out a little bit of your take on that.
Oh, and amazing. Canva just went from strength to strength, and the story behind their startup is incredible. You know, they just saw Melanie Perkins, who's one of the co-founders, another phenomenal woman, but push that.
I'd love to have her on. You know, I have reached out. You know, I mean, you know, hopefully we can get her.
I'll do what I can do. I'll definitely.
Okay, I appreciate. I'm not going to hold you to it, but that would be a very nice referral.
Definitely.
Okay.
They're a multi-billion-dollar business now. It's incredible. So they were founded in 2012. It's an incredible graphic design tool. You know, we as Fintech Australia, we're a startup. I've only got a team of 5, and we're delivering an 8-day festival. So we use any tools that are going to be able to help us. So we use Canva all the time. It's so simple. The user experience is great. The drag and drop facilities. It's kind of, you know, like Wix for websites, but for every part of your graphic design program.
And how about this? How about this Australian company? I mean, what's your knowledge and background with them? Yeah.
Yeah, and so Meetings, I think Canva saw that there was an opportunity to grow and find a company that was aligned.
I mean, that might be somebody good to have it at the conference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about.
Okay, well, you know what? Maybe I could see what I could do to help you out in that regard.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. I'll just write this down.
See that? You know, isn't that the way business is? You're going to help me, and I'm going to help you. I mean, I'm telling you, it's all about networking. It's all about networking.
Totally, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then to get you out to moderate. So have you been to Australia, Mitch?
Well, you know what? I would love it. That would be terrific. I look forward to that. In our wrap up round, it's actually sponsored by banksmarter.com. It's all about exploring alternatives to traditional banking and balancing it with business, family, and life. So from digital assets to fintech to FinServe and empowering your family through education, more and more consumers are banking smarter, whether it be through credit unions or community banks. Again, head on over to banksmarter.com. That's BANKSMARTER.com. Vanessa, this has been a lot of fun. You have an amazing story. Everybody wants to know, how are they going to stay connected? What's the best way that they can actually do that?
Stay connected to me?
Sure.
Well, one of the best ways.
Don't you think that people want to reach out, that they want to, stay connected, that they want to get in touch? I mean, the people over at Canva might want to, reach out and sort of be your next sponsor.
Oh, God, absolutely. The two best ways to stay in touch. One, to figure out what's happening in the Australian ecosystem, is to sign up to our newsletter. So if you just go to fintechaustralia.org.au, we've got a newsletter that talks about all of the incredible startups who are members, but also the wider ecosystem. And then the other way, the best way to contact me is through Twitter. I love having a Twitter conversation. And in fact, that's how I met one of our partners for Intersekt, the founder of Next Money, Rob Findlay. He was at the time working in Singapore, and he just reached out to me via Twitter. And then we had a Twitter conversation. They ended up being one of our partners, and he's now back working in Melbourne and also helping us with Intersekt again this year. And in fact, Joy Schoffler, who was the PR company that does all the fintech promotion at South by Southwest, she reached out via Twitter. I actually got her to come and speak at my summit in 2016, and then we went out to attend South by Southwest as a guest. So, yes.
So in other words, all of these startups, you can't be shy. You've got to kind of speak up. You've got to sort of get out there. You got to network. You got to make the connections, right?
Absolutely. You've got to be the opposite of shy. You've got to be that mosquito that is behind you all the time, making noise. Because people who say, I don't want to bother people, it's like, bother them. We are so busy, and everyone is so busy, startups in particular, and also the people you're trying to connect with. Everybody is so busy that be persistent, be contacting them all the time, reminding them that you're there, reminding them that you're not going to give up. As I said, my background was as a performer, and my friends who are still in the business, who are singers and dancers and touring the world, ones who made it were the ones who were doggedly persistent. They never gave up, no matter what, no matter how many no's they got, no matter how many rejections they got, no matter how many auditions they got turned away from. One of my favourite stories is David Atkins, who now runs a massive production company and is a director and choreographer for a lot of the Olympic Games. He was auditioning for a chorus line in New York and got cut. And so he got back into the theatre and climbed back onto the stage to audition again. He got cut again. He did it about 4 times until he got the role.
Amazing.
And that, for me, is a perfect story about startup. It
is, and I very much appreciate that, because that's what the podcast here is all about. It's about motivating, and it's about storytelling. You might have already addressed some of this, but quickly, 3 main takeaways here in closing, and you might have already kind of alluded to a few of them, but if you could wrap it up with 3 main takeaways, that would be awesome.
So 1, the biggest one: be persistent. Don't give up.
2?
Absolute faith. 2, think global. So beyond your own backyard. Think about where else you can take your business.
And 3,
talk to everybody. Get out there and talk to everybody. Because you could be talking to someone on the street and they could be your next sponsor or investor. You just don't know. Or your Uber driver. You just never know. Talk to everybody about it.
Vanessa, now I know why you were named a top 100 FinTech woman. Keep up the great work, and if you ever need to promote anything or you need to announce something, you just let us know. You are always a trusted friend of the Listen Up Show, the Mitchell Chadro podcast.
I'm very honored. Thank you very much for having me on the show this morning, Mitchell, or this evening. And I'll hit you up for that, and I'll see what I can do about getting Melanie Perkins for you.
Great. That's awesome. Until next time, my trusted friend. Hey, you take care. Be good now. Bye-bye. Please provide a well-written review in iTunes. Go over to mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It takes 2 minutes, but it helps others find the show. Subscribe anywhere. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, or any popular podcast aggregator. One of my favorites is actually Overcast.fm. So if you head on over to mitchellchadro.com/Overcast, you can subscribe on that podcast aggregator. Again, sign up back at my website for the latest podcasts, more articles, and send me an email about your business startup, and I'm happy to respond back at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. Thank you again, and I look forward to our next show.